Great. Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Anne Arundel County Police Accountability Board. My name is Jeanette Ortiz and I am the chair. It looks like we have a quorum of board members at the meeting, and so we can go ahead and get started on our meeting. Call to order. I have to remember that. So I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:31 p.m. here, Monday, August 15th. If we would like to go to the approval of the minutes, Jen, I don't know if you're able to pull them up on the screen. Board members should have received a draft of the minutes that Dr. Purcell sent to all of us. I think it was last week. And so I don't know if, there we go. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Not sure if anyone submitted any proposed revisions, but we want to go through.
We did receive one, just like a grammatical error,
Okay.
which I don't think we need the board's approval to change.
No, right. That's a technical. And I see Kimberly's hand up. Yes.
Just to the extent that it matters, when I just checked the link to the biography document, it said that it's in the owner's trash, that it can't be opened. If that matters, I just wanted to know that link did not seem to go to a document. I don't know if anyone else can access it.
Okay, thank you for that. I do know that it is posted online on the PAB website, so I'll make sure that the minutes reflect the link that is on the public website. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you. All right. So is there a motion to approve the minutes? Is that Dr. Ashworth? Is that your motion to approve the minutes?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move that we approve the minutes as documented.
Is there a second?
I second. This is Kimberly Jackson.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, so next on the agenda, and just as a note, we might have a stop because the county executive will be popping in, but we can go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which is a debrief of the implicit. Yes.
Chair Ortiz
He's here,
has
actually.
arrived.
Oh, there we go.
And I
Perfect
just-
timing.
Yes, there he is.
Hold on that. Welcome, County Executive Pittman. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. You are muted. I don't know if that's on the tech. Oh, there we go. Okay. Welcome.
Thanks. Good to be here with you all. You want me to say a few things?
So if you would like to say a few things, you are more than welcome to do so. But if you do not, that's totally up to you.
Yeah. I do have a few things to say.
Wonderful. Thank you.
And because I was not at your first meeting and I was hoping to be, but I wasn't able to be. And I wanted to just share a few thoughts. First, just thank you all for agreeing to participate in the PAB. You're the second PAB. There's the Planning Advisory Board was always the PAB, and now this is the PAB that gets talked about most. And they're kind of taking a back seat to you. But I felt really good about the process we used to select all of you, and I felt especially good about who we've got on board. And I know we're going to be introducing your executive director here shortly, but I want to just start out by kind of looking back on how we got here and at least share my thoughts about it all with you. I remember when the George Floyd murder happened and Chief Altamari at the time brought together leaders from the Fraternal Order of Police, the Caucus of African American Leaders, NAACP, the police command staff, the sheriff's office, and condemned what had happened in the strongest terms. And I could tell from those in the police side that they were really shaken up by it because it was their trade, their career, their institutions that were being made to look horrible by the acts of this person. And it grew from there. This was just a couple days after the incident, and then it grew from there. And I was inspired then also by the protests, particularly that young people organized in neighborhoods all around the county that were, my view of it was that they were very positive and forward thinking, that they were saying Black Lives Matter, which I believe to my core, and that this is an opportunity to get the country to deal with issues of race that have not been dealt with adequately, and also to take a hard look at how policing is done. In this county, I didn't hear people saying defund the police. I heard people say, let's make sure we don't have bad policing and let's have good policing. And I attended a number of those. Chief Altamari attended some. Police chiefs all around the country were attending these activities. And then the police chief resigned or retired. And that was a surprise to all of us. And he wrote a column in the Capitol in which he was quoted. And I'm going to read this to you because I think, we should all be just kind of aware of where we've come and how we're thinking about these issues. He said in his column to the Capitol upon his retirement, quote, "There's a movement in this nation and in this country to remove the teeth of the police. It is wrong, and it will have grave and lasting effects that you will see and feel." I actually wrote a column a few days after that where I reviewed the work of Chief Altamari that I had great respect for, because he had done a lot in our county to implement 21st century policing. And he had a great relationship with community leaders in the Black community, the Hispanic community. He had sort of prevented the county from moving into a version of 287G with that would have had the police department checking people's immigration status. He was a fairly progressive police chief in his actions, but he had an underlying fear that that things were heading in a direction that would be destructive. So I wrote a column where I had a much more optimistic view. And I said that I agreed with him on a lot of things, but I wrote, quote, "I don't agree with him that we have a movement in Anne Arundel County that threatens public safety. I believe that we have a movement in this county that will strengthen public safety, and here's why." And so I still believe that. And while a lot of the process has been difficult getting where we are with the Police Accountability Board, I still think that it will strengthen public safety, that we have to ask the hard questions and do the hard education and deal with these issues in order to build trust. Just like in a family, sometimes, or in a marriage, sometimes you have to talk about the hard stuff and you come out of that with trust. And I think that by selecting people who fortunately, most people don't know what you think about these issues. You have life histories, you have background, you have thoughts and feelings, I'm sure. But you are, I'm convinced, are representative of the community. You are fair-minded, well-educated, and thoughtful people with life histories that matter. And I'm looking forward to the recommendations that you make, because a lot of what you do is, I have always felt from the very beginning that we should have, like we do in other departments of government, we should have an advisory group on policing that speaks to the government, not just for the police department, but to the whole government. And that's what you're created to do. And that's going to require you to learn a lot about the police department. And it's going to require you to learn a lot about the community as well. And so in my job, I've been lucky enough to spend a lot of time listening. And when we made the decision, actually, I made a decision early on that we wanted to do body-worn cameras in this county. And it first came to me as a white man who's not in law enforcement. I'll never know what it's like to be an African-American man, and I'll never know what it's like to be a police officer. But I was able to put myself enough in the shoes of an African-American male driving at night, being pulled over by the police and having a sense of fear that many do, or concern, and being told that, hey, if there's a body-worn camera, the world is watching and I feel safer. And I've also heard from police officers that have a sense of fear that when they're in a difficult interaction with a resident and they know they're doing the right things, that they don't trust that the story will be told fairly, and having a body-worn camera, the world is watching. And so that was kind of an easy no-brainer, very expensive, but easy in terms of policy, I thought, to do. And I'm glad that we've done it. And that was a great step in the right direction of transparency. And I think that what you all are going to be doing is another step in transparency. People will see how decisions get made about how civilian complaints about interactions with police officers are handled. So they'll see the process. They won't know every detail of every investigation, of course, because it's still personnel matters. But I think that's what will be great about this. You'll have some hard decisions to make. Of course, there's an administrative charging committee that I appointed a couple of, and you appoint a couple of, and that's going to be a difficult decision. And you'll have other difficult decisions. But I'm really optimistic and positive about this. I think it's going to help all sides. So that's what I have to say about the PAB and general feelings about this. And I guess also just that, as a county executive, public safety is kind of, there's nothing more important than keeping communities safe. And I don't think there's anybody who argues against that. So this is very, very important work. So we interviewed folks, and we got community representatives involved in the interview process to make sure that you have a director that is up to the task of working with you and coordinating a lot of this work so that you don't have to do all of it yourselves as volunteers. And Jansen Evelyn, you have read about in the papers, and you're about to get to know very well. He stood out in the interview process. I had heard about him, and then I had met him once. I had met him at a Maryland Association of Counties event, and he had a resume that was kind of uniquely qualified for this. And what I love about Jansen's resume is that, he's done trial boards with police officers representing the government. He's been in the office of law. He's been an attorney in government. He's also been a deputy chief administrative officer in government under both Republican and Democratic administrations in Howard County, and understands really pretty intimately what the restrictions are, how government works, how slow it works, how difficult it is to get things done in government, what a lot of the challenges are. And then personality wise, he shined in the interview process, and I became convinced that he's somebody who has a life history through which he can understand the fears and the concerns in the community, particularly the Black community, of historical misuse of the power of policing in history, and knows it when he sees it, and at the same time has great relationships with police officers in the jurisdictions that he's worked with, because he listens, he's empathetic, and he gets the facts. So I think we got the right person for the job. So I guess I'm introducing to you Jansen Evelyn, your new director.
Thank you and welcome, Jansen. Thank you so much, County Executive Pittman, for your remarks, for reminding us of, kind of how we got here, and to this point of having a police accountability board and your perspective. And I think I can speak on behalf of other board members in saying that, this is an honor truly to serve on the board and to represent the citizens of Anne Arundel County, and to have a collaborative relationship with you and the law enforcement agencies. And we are ready to do hard work. We know it will be hard work. It's not easy, but it's important work and it needs to be done. And I think we're all prepared to do that. So thank you so much for your remarks, and welcome to Jansen. We are excited to work alongside you and to move forward with the mission of the board and to be partners with the community and with the county government and improving policing in the county. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm not going to take up a lot of time, but I'm listening to County Exec Pittman talk about me, and I'm like, who is that guy? So I'm humbled to have that introduction, but I'm also equally humbled to work with you good people, and I look forward to getting to know you all. And as the county executive noted, I have worked in local government. I have a lot of experience there, both as an attorney, as a public administration official, as an appointed, and I've worked on a lot of police matters, a lot of public safety matters. So I look forward to working with you, because I view this as following 2020 and the systemic awakening that occurred, and COVID forced us to look at and realize and not ignore what was happening around the country. And this allows us an opportunity to institutionalize or systemize police reform. And as the county executive noted, this is a good thing for the officers who daily put their lives on the line. And it's also a good thing for the citizens that they protect and serve. So I look forward to working with all of you, and thank you.
Thank you, Jansen. All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to add, County Executive Pittman?
No, I guess I could jump off and let you do your meeting. Maybe the only thing is that I know you'll be getting to know our police chief and some of the command staff, because I think I saw in your agendas that you have some briefings coming up. And I would just say that I believe we made a great choice in the police chief. After Chief Altamari, Amal Awad is she's respected by the officers. She is a cop through and through. She's grew up on the streets. I mean, she spent many years as an officer herself, but she also comes from a community that where there was lots of poverty and lots of crime, and came out of that feeling that was the way that she wanted to serve her community and improve it. So I think her heart is in a great place. I think our command staff is fantastic, and we have a great police department, and that they are the ones hurt. They are hurt when one of their ranks doesn't do their job as they're trained to do it. So I know you'll have a lot of cooperation in all the work that you do.
Well, thank you again for taking the time out of your schedule to stop in and say a few words. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Bye.
Bye. All right. So moving on to the agenda. Next on the agenda, we have a debrief on the implicit bias training. And so with us, we have county staff, Asha Smith and Pete Hill. So I'll let you all take it away. Thank you. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Gotta love that mute button, right? It still works. So good evening, everybody, and welcome again as new members of the PAB. My name is Pete Hill. I'm the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Director for Anne Arundel County. At this time, I want to turn the microphone over to my colleague, Asha Smith, who will introduce herself as well and give you a little background. Asha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Asha Smith. I'm the Equal Opportunity and Human Relations Officer for Anne Arundel County. It's nice to see all of you. I know a little while ago, Chairperson Ortiz said how honored you guys are to serve, and I'm just really excited to see such an awesome board. So it is my pleasure to be here this evening with all of you. So we are with you just to debrief a bit about the diversity training that you all did. As I'm sure you know, our law for the PAB requires all members to be trained, to receive diversity training. And so we coordinated, our office coordinated with the community college to provide that training. And so I think almost all of you have been trained. I know that Ms. Elliott is going to be trained in the next round because of when she was confirmed by the Annapolis County Council. But all of the rest of you have been trained. And so we did just want to talk a little bit about the training that you received. Pete?
So we had 2 questions and then a statement. And I would ask all 9 of you to respond to these questions if you would be so kind. And they are simple questions, I promise. The first question Asha and I had was, how will this unconscious bias training benefit you in your capacity as a member of the PAB? And we would like to hear from each of you if possible.
All right. Go right in, Dr. Ashworth.
No, I was going to ask, did you want it verbally out loud or in the chat?
Verbally, please.
Oh, okay. So I'll begin. I think it will benefit us as we bond, learn each other, know each other's differences, likes, difference, ideas, perceptions, which will, again, with the training, it's very important that we understand each other's thoughts and ideas. So as we begin to make decisions and come together as one, that although we may not always agree, the decisions that we make will be collaborative and in the best interest of what we're trying to do. So very beneficial.
Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever would like to go ahead and unmute, and whoever would like to go next.
I'll go. So
Okay,
it was super beneficial for me because it really showed me how I didn't think I was biased, but maybe so. I think the instructor used a demonstration of seeing a woman as a truck driver and not really associating her with that role. And I think it's little subtle things like that it really helps you to check your thinking. So it was a great course.
Thank you.
go ahead and unmute whoever would like to go next.
I was going to say, building on what Ann said there, just that we all have different biases, and how we respond to those and how we're aware of them and how we give room to those in a conversation and discussion is so important. So I think several of us took away that, that you have to give space for people to meet you where you are and meet them where they are. So I think it was a really great training, and happy to continue to work with you.
Awesome.
So I can go next. I'm kind of with Danny a little bit. We were in the same group for a couple of things. I just find it interesting that not necessarily the biases, but that we all came from different angles on so many different topics. We had some debates about some issues, and I think we ultimately were coming to the same spot, but we started at different corners or different segments of what we saw. We saw it from different perspectives, and I think we really got to the same spot, but it was 4, 5, 6, 7 different people at different angles trying to come to the same conclusion, because we've all had different life experiences, and we've all been raised differently. We've all had different careers. We've all had different life trauma, and we're all trying to pull together and work together. But it was an eye-opening experience to see how different we are, and yet we're still going to work together and appreciate each other and support our weaknesses.
Yeah.
Re-echoing what Sarah and everyone else have said, it was really a great opportunity just to get to know Barney and Jeanette even at a deeper level, and to draw on how our experiences, our traditions shape who we are, with biases that we may not know are there, but very much prevalent, and how yet we're different, but we're still so much the same. So it was easy to see ourselves as islands, living as individuals. There's sides to an island, and we are all there trying to get together to the middle. So I look forward to working with, this dynamic group of people and just learning and growing and just helping keeping each other in check or giving revelation or new insight to things from our experiences and our traditions, and then learning things anew.
Everything that my co-members have said about the training, it was a very good training. It was well thought out training. It was very thoughtful training. To me, it was also a notice to us as PAB members as to the kinds of things we need to be aware of, and the fact that the training was required says a lot about the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at and the kinds of shadow that implicit bias may play in many issues. If this is something that is required by statute, that says a lot about why we're here. So I took it as a notice to us and a message to the community also that will hopefully help us with respect to, decisions that we have to make and the ability to make them. One of the things that can be very difficult is trying to make a decision or have a rational discussion if certain things are kind of off the table. And so implicit bias is off the table. And so I just think that's another very powerful tool in our toolbox. I also felt that it was a message to us that this is an enduring problem. It's 360 degrees. There's everywhere you look, there's a bias issue. So it's something that we always have to be mindful of. It has to be managed in such a way that it's taken seriously, but also that we're also self-aware at all times and that we don't, while trying to solve some biases, create other bias problems. So I think it's just, there's a lot of different applications for it, but it was well done. And thank you for your putting it together and making it such a meaningful experience.
So have all 9 members had a chance to weigh in?
Well, I'm about to finish it up, I think, but
Okay.
bottom line for me and the benefit is that sometimes we don't see what we actually see. And as the unbiased course teaches us, you need to be aware of things beyond your bailiwick and how you grew up in your social upbringing to fully understand situations. So it causes us to now focus with, I believe, a more open mind on issues that maybe come before they maybe.
Outstanding.
And I'll end it by saying, I totally echo what's already been said by the members, my fellow board members. It's a reminder that we have to constantly check ourselves. I love what Kimberly said about a message to the community about, the fact that this was included in law, in statute, emphasizes the importance and the recognition that this is it's an issue and we're aware of it and we're going to do the best that we can do to be as unbiased as possible. And so hopefully, we're all checks and balances on each other as well. And it was really great, to get to know a little bit more about Barney and Reverend Moore. So it was a really good experience. Thank you.
So before I get to the second thing that we had, and we'll be out of your way shortly, I just want to say to this esteemed body that now that you've had this training, you always should be willing to be questioned by your colleagues. In fact, you should expect it, because we all now know that because of snap judgments and things of that nature, we tend to make decisions unconsciously. And so therefore, it would take somebody else looking at us to question our decision-making. And we shouldn't be offended by that. The last question we had for this group was, what was your aha moment? What happened in that course that made you say, wow, that makes sense to me?
Whoever would like to go first, go ahead and unmute.
Your aha moment.
This is Sharon. Although I haven't had the opportunity to take the training that was presented to this group yet, recently at work, we had to take an implicit bias training. And I'd like to use that kind of in answering the question that you just posed about an aha moment. And so the trainer, and you may have covered a similar topic as well, but one thing that the trainer said for our training is he presented a list of words that we often associate with Black men. And so in him presenting those words, it was really eye-opening to see those words and really think about the ways in which society, and even, I mean, across the board, will use some of those words and images whenever we see Black men. So it was an aha moment to see all of that, like him to put all of that in one space and really be confronted with how Black men are viewed. And the words of the instructor was across the board, is when he presented that, many people said, yeah, this is the way that I see them. So that was an aha moment in a similar training, but on the same topic.
Thank you for that. Anyone else care to share?
So
Go ahead, Dr. Ashley.
Go ahead.
I was going to say my aha moment was more looking beyond myself, that it's easy to take a narcissistic approach and only see through my lens, but realizing that no one community has a monopoly on exclusion or feeling left out or being oppressed or whatever. And that I have to look beyond just my vision, but see the bigger picture and take a more macro perspective and not a micro one. So I think that was more mine. Again, hearing the stories and knowing that we all had the same story, just differently. Dr. Ashworth?
I don't know if I had an aha moment, but it as we seem to do these trainings a lot in education. But I think doing, on the other night when we did this, again, just increasing my awareness of words matter, language matters, and how we put words together and describe and talk about situations, people, places matter. And just being intentional and, focused in putting words together that don't offend others. That was my increased aha awareness.
Thank you.
So I think I had an aha moment because I thought that all bias was bad, but actually some bias is, necessary for self-preservation. So that was an aha moment, because you always look at bias as being something unfavorable, but there is an amount of bias that could be favorable, like don't walk down that dark street, or just things that should be common sense. But that was an aha moment for me.
Awesome. Next.
I guess I'll go next. For me, it was the fact that I continually need to educate myself on things that I never grew up with. So it's becoming a continuing process of looking for articles, reading articles, and doing reviewing some of the research that's been done on unbiased activities, so that I become more aware of what I have not learned in my 76 years. Still got a lot to learn.
Oh man, that's inspiring.
I don't know that I had an aha moment. Implicit bias is something that I feel like I've been familiar with, but I did get kind of to dovetail on the comments that I made earlier. I did feel that it was a validation of a very serious issue, and that the fact that we're taking time to grow in our understanding of it, and the results of it, and the double-sided nature of it, as Anne mentioned, that there are some good sides to it. I mean, not only are there some good sides to it, it's part of how we think. It's part of how we analog and do math problems, right? So it's part of who we are, but it's also a part of us that has not been examined. The implicit part, and implicit bias, it's my understanding, speaks to the negative side of it, that part of it has just gone so long unchecked, and how serious it is, and how it's affecting something as important as law enforcement and communities alike, and how important it is to just use that as an ongoing guide and ongoing tool as we go through some of our experiences.
Thank you.
I would just build on what Kimberly said there and say that it wasn't maybe an aha moment for me, but it was an awareness that not everyone comes to the table with the same amount of training on bias that I've been lucky to receive, and that bias goes from race and gender identity, as well as obesity and education. There's a lot of different biases that we all encounter and we really don't respect as much as we should. So kind of the aha moment was that not everyone knows that all those exist maybe, and that we should all be more aware.
Absolutely.
To add to
feel
what
like-
Dan, oh, go ahead.
I feel like my answer might be repetitive for the first one, but I feel like, again, it's the watching people coming from different angles, and hearing the same message, and maybe their bias have sculpted the message and changed it a little bit. For me, that was something to observe and take in, that we all hear the same thing, and maybe because we have life experiences, our bias are not necessarily allowing us to hear the same thing, and so it changes the information that we receive just a little bit. And so I don't know if that was an aha moment, but I definitely observed it and can feel it. That training just kind of reaffirmed it for me. I found it fascinating on top of that.
Thank you for that. Is that
And
everyone?
I was just going to add to what Danny mentioned with regards to the various kinds of biases. It was not so much aha, as Dr. Ashworth says, we get a lot of training on implicit bias in education. And so we're very, very familiar with this issue and how important it is to really delve into it and draw attention to it and to educate ourselves. But just all the different types of biases, I think a lot of times we focus maybe on like a handful, but there are so many different ways in which bias can present itself on, in any given moment. And so just being aware of all of those different ways in which it sort of pops up, and trying to be more self-aware and more educated on the various biases that may pop up. So I thought that was really helpful. Thank you.
But thank you, members of the board. Asha and I are going to get out of your way at this time, but I want to leave you with these thoughts. Number one, if you have any additional feedback about the training you went through that you think we should be aware of, you have our email addresses. And the last thing I would say is the E in our name, EDI, stands for equity. And some of the work you're doing clearly deals with equity, right, in policing. And so we are a tool, a resource. Should you need us or need to lean on us for anything, we are from the government and we're here to help. So with that, Dr. Jen, we're done.
Nice to see you.
Thank you so much, Pete and Asha. We really appreciate you taking your time this evening to come and chat with us and to talk, do this debrief, because I think it just helps keep this top of mind, and it will just make us better board members. So thank you. And we appreciate the offer to utilize you as a resource. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, so next on the agenda, we have Lori Blair with the county as well to discuss Open Meetings Act. If you recall, at the first meeting, we had a little bit of discussion regarding the Open Meetings Act. So Lori will walk us through a little bit more with the state law and answer our questions. Thank you, Lori.
Sure. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have a little bit of a head cold, so I'm going to work through this. If anybody can't hear me, let me know. So I'm Lori Blair Klassmeyer. I am a deputy county attorney, and I just want to talk a little bit about the Open Meetings Act. You have a very full agenda. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So essentially, the Maryland Open Meetings Act is a state law that requires certain meetings of certain bodies be public. And what that means is they have to be open to the public, but they don't have to necessarily provide for public participation. So that is important to know. So basically what the act says is that a public body having a meeting, performing certain functions, has to be open. Spoiler alert here, you are a public body. We don't even have to discuss or debate because you were created by statute, and that is by definition, a public body. So that's an easy one. So having a meeting is also fairly easy. And what basically having a meeting means is that a quorum of the body meets for the purpose of transacting public business. So under the county law creating the PAB, the quorum is 5 people. So if 5 of you have a meeting and you are discussing public business, essentially you have to have an open meeting. Now, if you are at a social event, or just happen to run into each other at Costco or something like that, and 5 of you happen to be in the same room, it's not necessarily an issue unless you start talking about your public business. So it is important to know that if 5 of you are together and things start moving in the direction of discussing public business, you need to stop and move in a different direction. So the third thing is that you have to be performing a function that is required to have an open meeting. And so this is where this one, normally I don't have to talk a lot about this because almost all of the bodies that I give my little spiel to are advisory bodies, and an advisory function, an advisory body, all of the meetings when you're performing an advisory function have to be open meetings. So you do have an advisory function under the county code to, and I had this marked, and now I turned the page and lost it. But essentially, when you advise about the trends in law enforcement, et cetera, that is advisory. You're going to do a report to the county executive. That's advisory. And so any meetings where anything in that nature is discussed needs to be a public body. Now, where this gets a little tricky, and I don't normally have this issue, is if you're performing an administrative function, you don't have to have a public meeting. Now, the Open Meetings Act and the manual that is published by the Attorney General's office, which is kind of my Bible of open meetings, says that basically an administrative function and is anything that's not any of the other functions that are defined, like judicial or legislative or advisory. So that's like not real good advice, right? So I dug a little deeper. You do have a function where you appoint members of the ACC. And there are plenty of opinions, or at least several opinions, from the Open Meetings Compliance Board, which is a board that looks at complaints. They're set up to look at complaints under the Open Meetings Act, and they do issue opinions. And basically, they are saying that if you have a function under law that is to make appointments, that is an administrative function, and your meetings would not have to be open. So let me say this, however. An advisory function is always required to have an open meeting. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You can't choose one or the other. I will say that with an advisory function, while you're not required to have an open meeting, you can have an open meeting. So that's something that this body can decide if, when it's discussing those appointments, it wants to have open meetings. So basically what happens when you have to have an open meeting, as I mentioned, the public has to be able to attend the meeting. It can be something like this where it's virtual. We have, with the age of COVID, came a whole line of discussions about virtual meetings and how to function in the virtual world. And the Open Meetings Compliance Board has been very liberal in that regard, with the understanding of how technology has kind of taken over. I remember several years ago, I had to do an opinion about a county council member appearing by robot, which was basically an iPad on a stick. I called it. I don't know if you've ever seen The Big Bang Theory, where Sheldon decides he's not coming out of his room and he sends the robot all over his apartment. That's basically what this was. And that was really kind of a little bit controversial at the time. But now, the notion that people just need to be heard and heard kind of the two-way street there is basically accepted. And we've all learned to live in this function in this world. So you have to have, the public has to be able to attend in some manner. You have to have notice. You have to give reasonable notice to the public of the meeting. And you have to maintain minutes of the meeting. So those are the base. Oh, you have to, I'm sorry, you have to also publish an agenda, which you've done obviously for this meeting. So those are kind of the requirements for an open meeting. A meeting can be closed. It can start open and it can be closed. There are specific provisions of the law that are relating to closing meetings. I'm not sure how many of them, excuse me, would really be applicable. But you could, for example, if you wanted to have a meeting that involved your advisory function and then was followed by your administrative function, you could close your meeting. And there are procedures for closing meetings that are set forth in the act. I don't want to go into a lot of detail on that, but if you think that's going to happen, if you think there's something, if you have a question about something you're going to do and you're wondering if it's required to be in an open meeting or if you can close your meeting, we stand by ready, willing, and able to the law office, and we stand ready, willing, and able to discuss that with you and to give you better guidance on that. If you're interested in following up on this, I do want to point out, like I say, the Attorney General's office, they have a very good open meetings section on their website. If you go to the Attorney General's website and you go to Open Government, it's going to give the Open Meetings Act and the Public Information Act. And then you can click through to the Open Meetings Act, and they have, like I say, a number of resources. There's a manual, which is really well written and very well organized as far as open meetings issues. They have forms related to agendas and notices and closing meetings and things like that. So if you just want to get a good overview, it's always a good resource. Like I say, we're here, by
Just for one quick moment, Deputy County Attorney, I apologize, but
no.
I know that many of the information that you were just touching on, including the OAG's manual, that was the information that was provided to the board. And I know that while as we continue and as they continue to get more experience, that's when some of these specific questions will probably come up. But we wanted to make sure that we gave the board members an opportunity to ask you any questions.
Sure.
You're the subject matter expert while you're here. So and I'll Chair, it's with you.
No, I was pretty much at the end. So yeah,
Okay.
if there's any questions, I just wanted to give the broad stroke overview. I'm willing to answer any questions now, in the future, whenever. We can certainly, if you feel like you need somebody from our office at your meetings, we're certainly willing to provide that as well. Just want to throw that out there. So.
Thank you so much, Lori. We really appreciate that background. I'm sure we may have some questions in the future, especially as you indicated with COVID, we've moved on into virtual world. So lots of questions have popped up from that. So I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions for Lori, if you can use the raise hand function, that will let me kind of be a little bit more organized with calling on you. But if you don't, we can always reach out in the future. It's a lot of information. So.
Okay. And what I'll do is, I noticed that Asha and Pete have put their emails in the chat, and I can do that as well. So
wonderful. Thank you so much. Any questions at this time for Lori? I don't see any hands raised. Thank you again. We hope you feel better, and thank you for being with us in the evening and feeling under the weather. Get well soon. Thank you.
No, actually, I have one question that I think may be of importance for this board. I know that one of the roles and responsibilities that will be upcoming is the selection of the ACC, and they may want to, think about potentially having some sort of subcommittee. Could you quickly give maybe a quick overview in terms of how they have to navigate that to ensure that they are complying with the Open Meetings Act?
Sure.
Thanks.
Sure. So subcommittees, yes, they do raise an Open Meetings Act issue. The first issue is going to be the size of the subcommittee. So if you keep it at less than a quorum, then there won't be any open meetings. There shouldn't be any Open Meetings Act issues. The other thing is to have it appointed within the committee, within the board itself. So in other words, we don't have the county executive appoint the committee. Or some other county official, that it's within the board to assign these subcommittee assignments. So if that happens and you keep it at less than a quorum, they do not have to have open meetings. That makes sense.
Thank you for that clarification. Very helpful. All right, I don't see any hands raised. So thank you again, Lori. Feel better.
Sure. Thank you.
All right, so next on our agenda, we have Michael Batsaris. Sorry if I said it incorrectly, to give us a little overview on ethics and answer any questions we may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeanette. Hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you pronounced the name exactly correct. My name is Michael.
Good. I'm big on pronouncing names correctly, so you let me know. Thank you.
And I am the Executive Director and General Counsel to the Ethics Commission. And I was asked to show up today to answer any questions you may have. It's my understanding that most everyone has already taken the online ethics course. I hope that you have. If you haven't, please do so at your convenience. It's online. It shouldn't take much of your time. It's fairly simple. As you know, as board members, you are required and you are subject to the Anne Arundel County Public Ethics Law. And that law deals with several conflict of interest issues, including restrictions on participation, employment restrictions, disclosure of confidential information, and prestige of office issues. And you've probably all have gone through that pretty extensively in the training. I just want to let you all know before you answer any questions that you may have that the commission and I are here for you pretty much 24/7. We prefer to act proactively rather than reactively. So if you have any questions or concerns or thoughts, please reach out to us. If it's a simple issue, I can answer it individually and give you my thoughts and recommendations. If it's a more complicated matter that requires the Ethics Commission input, they are very good at getting back to you very quickly about an opinion or a informal advice. We try to keep things below the level of a complaint as much as we can. Complaints are very time-consuming to deal with, and fortunately in this county we don't have a lot of complaints, and I think the reason for that is that we are proactive rather than reactive, and we are available to answer questions either privately or publicly. My email information, I'll put it in the chat as well, but you can go to our website, you can download our forms, you can see some of our previous advisory opinions that may be applicable. You can search by word, by subject matter, by word, by topic. So if there's something you think you may need a little more information on, you can just type it into our search and you may pull up an opinion that deals directly with your issue or is similar to your issue. And if it's not, again, we're here to answer any questions. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I want to welcome Jansen as the director. I think you folks have a very important role to play in the county, and thank you for your service and your participation. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now or privately later on.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that overview. I really appreciate you taking the time this evening to be here with us. As Michael mentioned, if you have not taken the ethics training, please do so as soon as possible. But there was a link sent to the group, but if you don't have it, let me know, email me separately and we can send it along again. But it's really good training. It provides various examples that is helpful in trying to apply the law. So we appreciate your office, you and your office being a resource. And I've been on the website for the county and it is nicely laid out, different ethics issues and opinions that have come up over the years. And so, of course, I love, being proactive. If there are ever any questions, definitely ask questions. Does anybody have any questions this evening for Michael? If you do, please use the raise hand function so I can call on you. I see Kimberly, go ahead.
No, I think he's putting his email address in the chat. Michael, I think you're doing that. If you could just have your name and title, because it doesn't show up on the
Yep,
Zoom.
I'll put it all in the chat as soon as I log off here.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Any questions? All right, well, thank you so much, Michael. You have a good rest of your evening. Thank you.
All right, enjoy your meeting. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
All right, so we are about 10 minutes, a little bit, probably 15 minutes behind schedule. We were supposed to take a break from 7:10 to 7:15. Do you all prefer us continuing on, or would you prefer taking a break? I'll do a raise of hands, physical hands, if you would like to take a break. I don't see any hands, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is agency presentation from the Chief Fox from the Crofton Police Department. I believe he's on here.
I am.
Yes, okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. And we had sent some questions over to the law enforcement agencies, to provide us some background information. And just as a friendly reminder, this is a very high level overview, so they won't be able to get into so many details tonight, but certainly over time, we will be able to hopefully have them come back and provide more information to us in future meetings. And just to acknowledge that we also have Chief Kep Hammer here from the Anne Arundel County Community College, and he will be going next. So we'll go ahead with Chief Fox to give his presentation. And then at the end of his presentation, if there are any questions, we'll take them at that time. Chief Fox, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm going to give you a little breakdown of the Crofton Police Department, our agency structure, and some of you may or may not know about us. We are a small 5-man department at full strength. We're located in Crofton, Maryland. We are considered the Crofton Triangle, which is an area that's inside of Route 424, Route 450, and Route 3. It's the old part of Crofton, the old gated section. There is a small shopping center, whereas some of you may know the old Kmart shopping center is what everyone calls it. And we have 2 large apartment complexes, actually 3 large apartment complexes. And there's approximately 13,000 residents in Crofton. Currently, I'm down 2 officers. I had 2 officers resign within the last month. They went to larger agencies, which is a problem that we have being a smaller department. That's one of our issues. We are in the process of hiring 2 officers now that are retiring from the Anne Arundel Sheriff's Department. So that process is taking place, and hopefully within a couple of months, we'll have that taken care of. I am the chief, as I said earlier. I have an acting sergeant. Once we're at full staff, I'll have a full sergeant, and then we are all working officers, so we do all patrol the community and fight crime together. I'll break down our stats a little bit. I only went back 3 years. Our stats are basically kept by Anne Arundel County Police, but I, as the chief, keep an individual stats of our department. And just to break it down, in 2020, we handled 2,274 calls of service, and we had about 1,800 traffic stops, made 41 arrests. In 2021, we had 1,520 calls of service, 699 traffic stops, and 20 arrests. And so far in 2022, we've had 1,467 calls of service, 499 traffic stops, and 10 arrests. Those numbers do fluctuate. A lot of it has to do with staffing. And when we're at full staff, the numbers are obviously higher. Right now, we're working with a skeleton crew, but things will improve here soon. I was asked to give a breakdown of the complaints against officers for the past 5 years. And fortunately, we're a department that we don't receive many complaints at all. Sometimes we'll receive a rudeness complaint, or someone will say that the officer told him to shut up or didn't like the way that they were spoken to. I look into those small complaints myself. Any larger complaints that I feel are going to lead to either dismissal or a serious charge, I will contact Anne Arundel County Police, their internal affairs unit, and forward the complaint to them. So it's done independently by an outside agency. Since we're so small, we can't do like most agencies do and have a trial board ourselves or anything else. So I outsource all of our larger complaints. If Anne Arundel County cannot do it, I will contact Maryland State Police Internal Affairs, and they handled a complaint for us a couple of years ago and did a very good job. In the past 5 years, I've had to criminally charge 2 officers, one in 2018 and one in 2020. There was another case that could have led to criminal charges, but the officer resigned as part of an agreement to just separate from the department. So that case was handled informally. He was flagged by the Maryland Police Training Commission and will no longer be a police officer. The 2 criminal cases resulted in a conviction. Both pled guilty. Restitution was made, and the officers will no longer be a police officer again in the state of Maryland. One other case back in 2015 was a new hire that we had a truthfulness on his background information that was it was determined that he didn't give us the proper information on his background. So once I found that out, I brought him in the office and he resigned on the spot. So he is no longer a police officer. And pretty much that's it complaint wise. Like I said, every now and then I'll get a complaint from a resident for something very minor, and I will bring the officer in. I'll talk to the resident and figure out what happened. Sometimes it's a miscommunication between the 2 of them. Sometimes it is the officer that was a little gruff at the time. So I'll document it in his personnel file, talk to the officer, and then keep a close eye on him. And knock on wood, I had no repeat offenders. So my plan must be working, and I'll keep an eye on that as the officers and the citizens interact with each other.
Chief Fox, I was just gonna jump in real quick. I don't know if your camera is not working, but your camera is not on, so I don't know if that is just an issue on your end.
Okay,
on your device.
I thought the camera was on. I
I just wanted to let you know. I don't know if you were aware of that.
No, I didn't. I wasn't aware of that at all, but I apologize for that. I don't
No
know.
worries. It could be the little sliding thing over the camera lens. If it's a laptop, that happens to me sometimes.
No, I have a desktop, and that's the camera that I've used on all my Zoom meetings. Let me see.
No worries. I just wanted to let you know. Oh, there you are. Okay, great. Good to
All
see
right.
you. Thank you.
Okay, am I still on? Okay, there I am.
Yeah, you're still on. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
All right, I was going to give an overview of the internal investigation process. I think I kind of touched on that, how we outsource the investigations, and we're, like I said, we're a small agency, so we can't really, do things the way the larger agencies do it. And then one of the other questions I had was, efforts made by the agency to build community relations and mediate conflicts. Well, the community relations part of it is, that's something that we've done for many years here at Crofton. We have a large national night out in Crofton. In fact, we just had it a couple weeks ago. We put on a fantastic booth, mostly directed at the children. We have games set up and lots of prizes. It's a good time for the officers to interact with the children and the parents. And we set up a little photo booth with a cardboard cutout of a police car and another cardboard cutout of a jail. And the kids are allowed to get their photos taken with the officers if they want them. And then we provide a police car that they're allowed to sit in, turn the sirens on and blow the horn and basically be kids, and they get a big kick out of that. So we all very much enjoy National Night Out with the kids. We also have here in Crofton several Boy Scout, Girl Scout, and Cub Scout groups that we take a tour through the building or talk to them about police work and safety, and sometimes we help them with their bicycles, teach them bicycle safety and things of that nature. And each year we have a Easter egg hunt, an ice cream social. It's a great time for the officers to interact with the children. And we have 2 parades, a Christmas event, and every year during school, the officers, they are positioned at the 2 largest bus stops that we have. The officers will park their cars, leave the lights on, slow traffic down and get out and help the kids cross, even though there's a crossing guard. We'll fill in when there is no crossing guard, but the officers get to interact with the kids and the parents, and I think that's really served us greatly. In several years, we get to watch the kids grow up and get to know more of them. And if there's any issues with the kids, they're not afraid to come to us with anything that we might have. And being a small town, we get to know the residents, we get to know the kids, and that helps build the trust and support for the officers and the department. And that's really good community policing. And I really encourage the officers when they're hired here to really emphasize community policing as part of their daily activities. And they do a really good job of that. And then the next question I had was a mini SWOT analysis. Now, I'll be honest with you, I had to look that up. I think it's SWAT because I was a SWAT officer for 7 years, but I thought, no, it didn't look like it's spelled correctly. So I did look that up, and strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat analysis. And I think some of the strengths of having a police civilian accountability board are the complainants are given a place outside of a police department to file a complaint. Sometimes, it can be intimidating for someone to come into a police department to complain against one of their officers. And I can see the, hesitant nature of some people not wanting to do that. So having an accountability board and being able to do that somewhere else, I think is a very good positive thing for the citizens and for the officers. And it can also help hold the agency responsible for the officers' actions. And there's an increase in transparency. And a lot of times in high profile cases, which it seems we've had a lot of in the past few years, it can help reduce the public concern on, are things being done? Are things being done correctly by the right people? Are they going to cover it up? Questions of that nature. Having an accountability board will help ease that troublesome worry of a lot of people. And, I think that's a good thing for the police and the citizens of the county and of Crofton. Some of the weaknesses I see, it would be hard for a civilian to know what a police officer was facing or thinking without being in their shoes at the moment. And I can say that with experience. There's been moments in my 43-year career where I've been absolutely petrified. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit that sometimes you're out there at 3, 4 in the morning and, you get that call and the hair on your back just raises. And unless you experience that personally, you wouldn't know what that feels like. So, I would encourage the board to keep that in mind when they make any determinations, because that is a weakness I can see. And another weakness I could see would be maybe for officers to hold back, not patrol as aggressively as they did before, because they're afraid of the unknown. They're afraid of, are they going to get in trouble? Is this accountability board going to treat them fairly? I mean, those are legitimate questions that police officers or anyone would ask. And I think that would be a weakness that would have to be addressed over time. I think that once the officers see the fairness, the impartiality, that things will change and it will be more accepted. Right now, I think there's going to be a little resistance, and hopefully that is short-lived and things will move along real smoothly. An opportunity to show the public that all complaints against police are investigated and not all complaints are going to be valid or warranted. There's a lot of people that would just make a complaint to make a complaint. I'm not saying that if someone makes a complaint, there's no validity to it, but it could be something that, maybe they had an issue with an officer a couple of years ago and they want to get them back or whatever. But, that's an opportunity to show that the public that we are looking into it properly. And once again, the transparency. And the only threat I could think of we would want to avoid officers not doing their jobs. And I'll use Baltimore City as an example. The Freddie Gray case, it seemed like after that case, after the trial and everything, that the officers just basically sat in the corner and hid and didn't do their job, and crime went rampant. And once that attitude starts, it's hard to regain control of that person or that department again. So I think Baltimore has a lot of work ahead of them to, change the atmosphere that's there, and hopefully that they can overcome that and have the officers do their job, because that's basically they're paid to do their job, and it's not a pretty job sometimes, but somebody has to do it. And that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you so much, Chief Fox, for that overview. So now we'll move to questions from board members. If you have a question, please use the raise hand function here on Zoom so that I can call on you. Reverend Moore.
First, thank you, Chief Fox, for your leadership and for the service that your department has rendered to the community. I had a question. If you could share what the demographic is with your staff, male, female, gender, ethnicity, and also how are you dispatched for calls? How do you receive calls? Is that through Anne Arundel County Police 911, or do you have a call-in center that's direct to your station?
Okay. Yes, it's a very good question. Actually, we're dispatched through Anne Arundel County, and we also receive calls at Town Hall from residents, and then we will contact dispatch, let them know that we received the call and what address we're going to. But we encourage the residents in Crofton to call communications at Anne Arundel County. As far as demographics of the department, the two officers that we have now are both male officers. One's white, one's black. The two officers that we are looking into to hire right now are both going to be males, and one's black and one's white. So our demographics are about 50-50. I wish that we had a female apply. We haven't had a female ever apply to the Crofton Police Department that was qualified. We normally take retired or already certified police officers, and it would be nice to have our first female officer one day, but we'll wait and see on that.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Do we have any other board member questions? Danny.
Hi there. Could you just speak to, do the officers hired into the Crofton Police Department go through the county's training? I know they have the site in Davidsonville. Is that training universal for all officers in the county or just Anne Arundel County officers?
We actually go through in-service training with Anne Arundel County every year, and most of the officers have been through a police academy. In fact, they all have to be certified. And some of them went through Anne Arundel's police department. I did back in 1980. And, you know, I have since gone to in-service every year. Even as a chief of police, I'm not required to go to in-service training. The only thing I'm required to do is qualify with my weapon, but I go every year as an officer because I'm working the streets with the officers and I want to know the updates on the laws and what they're going through. If I'm going to tell them to do something, I want to experience what they're trained to do and know it as well.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. I do. Oh, go ahead, Barney.
I have to find my mute button to turn it on so I can talk to Chief Fox. The new PAB procedures, you do report through Anne Arundel County for your investigations, and perhaps the board members as well can enlighten me. But will we also receive those complaints simultaneously as part of the PAB?
I'm not sure how that's going to work because in the past, any complaint other than something that I could handle informally, I sent to Anne Arundel County. So I would assume that Anne Arundel County will handle any complaint through their internal affairs unit and send them directly to you. We do not have access to IA Pro, and that was one of the reasons why Anne Arundel County is going to handle our complaints.
Thank you, and we can certainly ask for clarification on that from the County Police Department. I did have a question. Does your department have disaggregated data on traffic stops?
The traffic stops that we do are handled on e-ticks, just like Anne Arundel County's. So whatever the state requirements are, that's what we handle as well. So every department in Maryland's using the e-ticks. So I would imagine that data is collected by them.
So if we wanted to get that data, would that be something you would be able to share with the board, or would it have to come from the state police?
It would have to come from MSP, Maryland State Police.
Okay, thank you. I see Kimberly's hand raised.
Yeah, just a quick question. Thank you, Chief Fox, for coming tonight. It's appreciated. And it's good to get to know all of the different agencies in Anne Arundel County. I had a question about, one is the statistics. I'm having trouble with my tongue tonight. Is there some place where we could get those statistics that you shared with us earlier about the calls and arrests and traffic stops that you were talking about earlier? I was trying to keep up, but it was difficult for me to keep up with all of those statistics. If that's something you could share with us, is just a request. And then also, I was curious to know what the complaint process looks like. How does it work? Is it something that you can do online? I heard you say come into the department. Is it something that requires a complainant to come in person? How does that work exactly?
With us, I have our complaint procedures on our website, which is croftoncommunity.org. And I encourage people to come in person and then file the complaint and sign it. But you don't necessarily have to do so. And you can make the complaint to Anne Arundel County Police if you would like, or you could email it to me. It doesn't have to be done in person, but I prefer it to be done in person. And as far as these stats, these are the stats that we keep as a department. They are not stats that Anne Arundel County keeps. All of our stats, criminal, everything that we do is handled by their central records department. But I can surely give you copies of our stats or give the board a copy of any of our stats. I have them dated back for several years, and it would be a simple format for me to write them down, either email them or send it to you in hard copy. It doesn't matter.
No, it's just helpful to understand volume. That's all. It would be helpful to understand that. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much. Any other board member questions? I see Reverend Moore's hand raised.
Yes, one last question. Does the department publish an annual report that maybe we could look at, or you do not produce one?
We do not produce one. In fact, I don't know throughout the history of the department if we've ever produced one. You know, just to touch on something that I mentioned earlier about our stats, I do post our stats on our website. So the lady that was asking about them, they are on our website at croftoncommunity.org. But the annual report, no, we do not do one here, sir.
Thank you. Any other board member questions? Okay, great. And thank you so much, Chief Fox, for your time this evening. We greatly appreciate you giving us this background and answering our questions. I'm sure, you know, we may have some questions that pop up at a later time, but certainly, you know, I can ask board members to send them along to me or to Jansen, and we can get them to you if that's the case. We certainly look forward to working with you as the PAB and moving forward and having a collaborative relationship. And so we appreciate you taking the time this evening to be before us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was nice meeting everybody, and everyone seems like a very nice people, and it was a pleasure watching your meeting for the first time.
Thank you. And so now we will move on to Chief Cap Hammer from Anne Arundel County Community College. Welcome, Chief. Thank you so much for being here this evening. And so, Chief, am I saying your name correctly? I want to make sure.
It's Cap Hammer. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, it's Cap Hammer. And thanks for
Cap
having
Hammer.
me.
Sorry, Cap Hammer. I was like emphasizing the P instead of the F, but I like to get people's names, saying them correctly. That's important to me. So Chief Cap Hammer, thank you so much. And so all the chiefs were given the same sort of set of questions. And so thank you so much again for providing this overview. And at the end of the chief's presentations, if there are any questions, we will go ahead and ask them. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have a PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. Okay. All right, Jennifer, will you be forwarding these slides for me, I suppose?
I will just say next slide and I'll do it.
Great, thank you very much. So yes, my name is Sean Caphammer. I'm the Chief of Police of the Anne Arundel Community College Department of Public Safety and Police. A little bit about my background. I started off law enforcement in 1990 in the Baltimore City Police Department. I retired from there in 2011. After that, I was a small town police chief in York County, Pennsylvania for close to 3 years. After that, I went to Loyola University, Maryland, when I was the #2 person in public safety. And I've been in my current position in my 7th year. And I'm very happy to be here. Next slide, please. Here's a little bit about our agency leadership and structure. You'll see there me at the top. Some of my direct reports are an emergency manager. We have an administrative services manager that takes care of all the admin within the department. We have a crime prevention officer, and we'll talk about that a little later. She is responsible for all of our community outreach. We also have a patrol operations commander, Captain Presley, He has a assistant as his direct report, and he also has 3 lieutenants which supervise the midnight day work and midnight positions. I guess I'll answer the question about demographics of my department since that came up. So we are comprised of police officers who are certified through the Maryland Police Training Commission, and we're also comprised of special police officers who get their arrest authority through the governor's office. So as far as police officers go, we have 5 white male officers. We have 1 black male officer. We have 2 white female officers, and we have 1 Asian male. For our public safety segment, we have 13 white males, 2 white females, 2 black males, 2 black females, and 1 Hispanic female. Next slide, please. Okay, so you'll see our officer complaints and use of force for the past 5 years. To the left, you'll see the complaints against police officers. You'll see that we don't get a whole lot of complaints, sometimes 1 or 2 a year. We take them all very seriously. Prior to this, we did complete investigations on them, which included taking witness statements, officer statements, issuing the law enforcement officer's Bill of Rights when that was still part of the law. We did complete packets on them, and we rendered verdicts. We never had a serious complaint, but if we did something that we couldn't handle within the department, we have a memorandum of understanding with the county police. They've been a great partner to us, and we would be referring those types of complaints to the county police for investigation. We'll talk about all the complaints in brief detail on the next slide. To the right column, you'll see our use of force for police officers. During our past 5 years, we've only had 3 uses of force. And these uses of forces don't involve any types of impact weapons or anything like that. These are simply someone that won't put their hands behind their back, and we have to take their hands behind their back and put them behind their back. So no strikes, very simple. Some departments would not even include those as uses of force. We did. So you'll see we had 3. 2 of them were for suicidal subjects, and we had to get them emergency petitioned. And 1 was for an assault case, which involved 2 female students. And unfortunately, we had to take one of those students to jail. Next slide, please. Okay, so just a quick summary of all the complaints. The first one was a discourtesy complaint. The officer focused on a tint violation, and he didn't discuss the other violations until he issued the 4 citations to the complainant. That case was exonerated. We had another discourtesy complaint. The complainant was driving the wrong way up a one-way street. The officer was reported to be rude and too abrupt. The complainant would not provide a statement to our investigating officer. A passenger was giving the officer an obscene gesture during the traffic stop. That case was non-sustained. We had another discourtesy complaint in 2019 involving a tint violation traffic stop. The officer was said to be discourteous. The complainant refused to provide a statement and blocked the investigator's number, so we weren't able to fully investigate that. In 2019, we had an equipment violation policy in which the officer left a gun in a bathroom stall. Same was recovered immediately without incident. That officer was sustained and given a letter of reprimand. Next slide, please. In 2019, we had a discourtesy involving a parking ticket that was issued. The complainant felt that the officer was rude. We had no independent witnesses, and that case was non-sustained. In 2021, we had a conduct case. One of the officer's wife received her COVID shot when she was not authorized. That case was non-sustained. And our last one was in 2022, was a discourtesy. The officer offered a business card to the complainant when she looked at his name tag. The complainant felt that the officer was being insincere. That case was exonerated. Next case, please. Next slide, please. So here you see all of our criminal case dispositions to the right. And you'll see that we have many ways to abate incidents other than just arrests at the community college. That's kind of like the last thing we want to do. We don't want to have to arrest a student if we can avoid it. So we have the student conduct process here to alleviate those types of problems. We send them to the director of student conduct, and a lot of the things we can take care of that. We have no trespassing orders. If we have a problematic person, we can give them a no trespass order. If they come back, we can cite them, or we can place them under arrest. We do some criminal and civil citations on occasion. And lastly, we do physical arrests if we have to. And you'll see that we don't have a whole lot of physical arrests. So see a whole lot of no trespassing orders, civil citations, and a few arrests. Next slide, please. Overview of our internal investigation process. I imagine the way it will be now is we will get a citizen complaint received directly to us or to the PAB. We will assign it an investigator, which will always be our 3 to 11 shift commander. He handles all of our internal complaints for us. The investigator will conduct the investigation. He'll send the investigation to the PAB. The employee will either be charged or non-sustained by the charging committee. There will be an offer of discipline to the employee. He'll either take it, he or she will take it or not. It'll go to a trial board at that point. The ultimate discipline will be imposed, and then if an appeal is warranted, then the appeal would happen. So as I say, any serious complaints that we can't handle, we will panel off to the county police. Some of the efforts made by our agency to build community relationships. We have quite a few programs we do. We do the Rape and Aggressive Defense Program, or the RAD training program for women. We do a coffee with cops several times a year to engage with the students and faculty and staff. We have a community emergency response training team training that we do for students and employees. That's a good a bridge gapper. We support our Maryland Special Olympics. We participate in the Polar Bear Plunge and the Law Enforcement Torch Run. We do cover the cruiser fundraisers that go towards Special Olympics. We also present medals to Special Olympics recipients at the Summer Games. We participate in National Night Out safety events. We also participate in the Toys for Tots. We are a reception for the toys here on campus. We do Shop with the Cop with the county police. We support the Bikes to Tykes program for boys and girls clubs. We support also the Cram the Cruiser police collection drive for seniors. We also do a nice event for the students and the employees here. We do a Halloween. We give away free pumpkins, and we have a what's it called? Where you sit in the wagon. The hay wagon thing. You know what I mean? So we do that every year at Halloween time. That's one of our biggest events, and it's very well received. Next slide, please. Here's some pictures of some of the events that I just discussed. Some of the employees engaged in that. The SWOT analysis. So some of the strengths of this new law, I think, would be transparency for the public, so they see that complaints are being taken care of in a fair and equitable manner. Some of the weaknesses, I couldn't come up with any when I was doing this analysis. Some of the opportunities, obviously, greater public trust. And some of the threats, I think, would be maybe a resistance to change from the rank and file. Although I don't think you're going to find that from my department. That's always a risk. And that's pretty much all I have. What kind of questions can I answer for you?
All right, thank you so much. That was really helpful. And I'm a visual person, so I loved the slides. Thank you so much. Are there any questions from board members? Please use the raise hand function. I see Kimberly's hand raised.
Hey, Chief, how are you?
Hi, good. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And I wanted to ask a question though about the complaint process, because I'm really trying to get an understanding of, since we've been charged with this, being part of this process, what happens after the complaint? Like when you say the officer was exonerated, I get the non-sustained piece because you basically have a purported, complainant that doesn't show up or doesn't continue to prosecute a complaint. But what actually was the process? Like who, quote unquote, exonerated the officer? I'm just trying to get a better idea of how that works.
Sure. So prior to this new legislation, the final discipline came down to the chief of police. So I would take all the statements. They would give me a complete packet of everybody's statements. If it was a word-on-word type of a case, historically in internal affairs cases, that would go towards the word of the police officer. If there was an independent witness, it would be sustained against the police officer. If the complainant failed to give us a statement or wouldn't cooperate, that would be like a non-sustained, because we don't know whether it happened or not. If it's clearly that the officer didn't do anything wrong, or what the complainant is saying actually even did occur, but it's not a policy violation, then that would be a finding of exoneration. But now, of course, that's all changed and it's going to come down to the charging committee.
I get that. I just wanted to understand that. So for instance, and this is just me asking, if there was a situation where, like, if an officer knows that there's this officer and another person, right? And there's no eyewitness, what prevents that loophole of maybe an officer taking liberties in that situation that they wouldn't take if there was an eyewitness? Was there a way to kind of address that or net that at all?
Well, we have cameras across campus, 600 cameras. So it's pretty hard to do anything out of the view of a camera on AACC's property. So we have that, and we will review camera footage. We'll take the officer's statement. And if we find any inconsistencies, that would certainly be a determining factor. But as you see, we don't really have that many complaints. So I think my officers conduct themselves appropriately, and I instill in them that this is a partnership here at the campus. You know, we all work together here. So my officers are all very, they conduct themselves accordingly, I feel. So I think that with the advent of body cameras, the whole word on word that's going to be eliminated. It's going to be on tape. Unfortunately, we don't have those at this point. We are looking into getting them. So I look forward to that.
And it's one just follow-up question, and I realize that you don't have many complaints, so this is really just trying to get a better understanding of the culture and the process. So that's all that's intended here. If, for instance, you were concerned, like let's say there wasn't an eyewitness and the officer got exonerated, is there any, like, I guess I want a better understanding of the training that the officers get to make sure, like you're saying that they conduct themselves very well, and yes, I would agree with you. I'm curious to know what would happen if there were problems, or if you anticipated problems. Are there special ongoing trainings that you do with the officers? I know you do a lot of great stuff in the community, but I was curious to know about like continuing like professional training on some of these issues.
Sure. Well, all the officers, the nine police officers we have are mandated to go to in-service training every year. So they receive different topics provided by the county police department with all the rest of the officers. Some of them are mandated by law, some of them are picked by the county police as current trends. We also receive training that every other employee through the college goes through, those types of things. And I think it's just something I try to instill on a regular basis of how important community engagement is.
Thank you so much for those questions and those answers. I see Sharon's hand up.
Yes, both you and Chief Fox, I believe, presented some data on the kinds of information that you collect as it relates to incidents and the disposition and so forth. I'm wondering, is there a repository or a deposit, but a place where where you and all of the police departments around the county submit that information? Or is this just something that you maintain internally?
Are we talking about arrest statistics?
Arrest statistics and maybe some of the other fields of data that you collect.
It's mostly internal. I mean, a lot of those things could probably be looked up on a state database for arrests, but the spreadsheets that I showed you are our internal spreadsheets.
Okay.
And
okay.
all of our arrest reporting and crime reporting goes directly to the county, and they do our UCR reports, so they have all that as well.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Reverend Moore's hand up.
Good evening, Chief, and thank you for being with us again as well. I'm gonna use the term that probably you didn't use because I don't recall what you said, but with the sworn officers vice the commissioned officers by the governor, how are the complaint processes handled for non-sworn officers, but they're uniformed and badged? A lot of times with the public, they don't know the difference between sworn and commissioned or special police or whatever. So is it a different process that's handled for complaints with non-sworn officers who do not carry as for those who are sworn and carry in your agency?
Sure. So the special police officers, although they were not afforded the law enforcement officers Bill of Rights, so they were not entitled to a lawyer when that stuff took effect, and they do not fall under this current legislation. We handle those complaints like we would before, just minus the LEOBR rights. So we do complete investigations. We'll pull up cameras. We'll take statements. We'll transcribe the statements, and then we try to come up with the truth if there's a complaint. So that's how we do it. And that's how we're going to continue to do it, complete investigations.
And those complaints or times of adjudication would not come before the PAB?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. And I see Sharon, your hand up. Is that from before?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, let me take it down.
Oh, no worries, no worries.
Okay.
Any other questions from board members? Okay, I have a few. So, so how long does it take for the 3 to 11 shift commander to investigate a complaint on average?
It really depends on how fast we can get in touch with the complainant and get all the statements done. I stress them to do it as quickly as possible. I know under the new legislation, there's a specific guideline, although it's not on the tip of my tongue, but very, very quickly.
Okay. And then you mentioned that for serious offenses, you have an MOU with the county police department to conduct those investigations. Can you share what types of things would be considered serious investigations? What types of complaints?
Sure. So I would say any type of a serious use of force, where the complainant is injured, put into the hospital, something of that nature. Anything that's a violation of a criminal statute, I would have the county police look at. We're going to do the stuff here in-house, which are like discourtesies, being late for work, things of that nature, poor performance of duty, anything that rises to anything that I think we're not going to be able to handle. I'm going to call the county internal affairs to take care of that.
Thank you. And then my next question is, I see all the wonderful activities you do with the community, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but do you all also, do your officers meet like with the student groups on the AACC campus? Like, have you been invited to speak to different student organizations and things of that nature?
Yes, well, as of late, we don't do it, but we used to do a student orientation. I do an active shooter class. I have several of those coming up that are geared towards students and also faculty and staff. The officers are constantly on foot in the buildings, walking, talking to people. They know everybody on their assigned posts. If they're not walking, then they're on a bike or they're on motorized patrol. So we're very engaged with people on campus. And we've done surveys, and we get pretty high ratings for that.
Okay, so the surveys are of the entire AACC community or just students?
Actually, I think it's faculty and staff. I don't
Faculty
think
and staff,
students are
okay.
involved in those. We don't set them up, but we get the results.
Got it. Okay. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from board members? Okay, I don't see any hands up. Thanks to you both, Chief Kaffhammer and Chief Fox, for being with us this evening. As I stated earlier, we absolutely appreciate your time and learning more about your respective departments, and we certainly look forward to working with you as we move forward with our work on the board. Thank you so much, and you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice talking to you.
Thanks. All right, moving on. Next on the agenda is a discussion on the Administrative Charging Committee selection. So for those, I know Sharon was not at our first meeting because she was not appointed yet, but as you saw, in the minutes, we did start a discussion on the selection of AACC members. As a reminder to the public and to board members, we as a board select 2 members of the Administrative Charging Committee. There is an application that is out there for folks to apply to be considered for membership. And what we discussed at the last meeting was that we as a board would think about, what types of things we are looking for in a member of the administrative charging committee. I'll just say ACC. And as the county executive mentioned, the county executive also appoints 2 members. And then I, as chair of the PAB, am also a member of the ACC, lots of acronyms. So we wanted to just have an idea to start thinking about, like, what are we looking for, in members. And Jansen asked a question of Lori earlier about possibly creating a subcommittee. That might be a good idea as well to make the process a little bit more efficient. So that's certainly something we can discuss. Just as a reminder, some of the things that we talked about at the last meeting, because, as far as what we would be looking to do is to establish a term for the ACC members. That's not currently prescribed in law. And so I think we talked about, establishing a set term for a member of the ACC. So they're not, sort of on the ACC in perpetuity, that we would want an interview process for applicants, that we would want representation of the gender, racial, geographic diversity of the county. We're interested in having, at least folks with some experience or background maybe in investigatory experience. And so those are the things that we discussed. And so I just wanted to, I guess, gauge from you, are those sort of qualities still things, that this board is looking for in ACC members? And if you could, I guess, since we can, folks want to unmute, since we don't have I see, well, Dr. Ashworth is being proper, so we'll do the raise hand function. Go ahead, Dr. Ashworth. Thank you.
So I was thinking about the terms, as we did discuss our last meeting, about what that would look like since there wasn't any established. And as I was thinking about it, I was thinking that whatever those terms are, do they need to match PAB's terms in terms of longevity on that particular committee?
That's a good question. So currently, I don't recall specifically the breakdown, but some of us are 2-year terms and some of us are 3-year terms. And so that's certainly something to think about as far as an ACC member. Do we want to track with our membership terms? 2 and 3, again, we only appoint 2. And then the other thing, not to add like a wrinkle to it, I don't know, if the county executive is also looking, to do terms as well, but we're responsible for our 2. So it's just something to think about. We can have one person as a 2-year, one person as a 3-year, or if folks have different ideas.
That sounds reasonable to mimic, what we have set up for our board.
Are folks in agreement with that? Is there consensus around having a member serve a 2-year term and one member serve a 3-year term?
Yeah, I think that works with the transition, right? So one will be leaving and coming on, so that would help with some transition of information as one is going off. There's still one remains that has some historical perspective of whatever decisions, thoughts, conversations they had engaged in.
Okay.
I'm in agreement with that statement as well. I think we need some continuity from one position to the next position. So the 2-3, I'd be in favor of that.
Okay. I see Reverend Moore's hand up.
Could we possibly, along with, for continuity, put a cap on it that's congruent to our service on the board, that it's a 2-term limit and then we have to come off for a period of time. I think they did the hard work in establishing the criteria for us, and for us to like kind of, do the work over again, kind of be redundant, but just model that across the board.
Thoughts on that?
I agree.
I see nodding heads.
I agree as well.
Okay. I was going to mention, so we talked about at the last meeting about representation, right? Obviously, I'm sort of the person as chair, and then we get 2 folks. So we would endeavor to do our best to represent the racial, gender, geographic diversity of the county. And if I'm not mistaken, in the county code, in the language that established our police accountability board, there's language in the law, representation of individuals who have had, from communities that have had lots of interactions or something, I'm totally paraphrasing, with law enforcement. So I don't know if that's something we want to consider as well, since we're, kind of tracking different things with the ACC membership to our membership. I don't know if, folks have an opinion on that, or if you just like that just literally, I just thought about that a few minutes ago, that language is just a little bit different with regards to how, the selection of PAB members was made and what the local law was looking for. I don't know if there are any thoughts on that.
I'm thinking that we do need that experience of internal affairs, given that that's the next step in the process. We begin to evaluate in a more detailed way the statements of the witnesses, the officer, the history, charging committee. I think you do need somebody with internal affairs.
Do folks agree that we'd like to have someone with that sort of background, or one of our members that we select, or at least a consideration, right? It doesn't have to be a determining factor, but that would be considered as something we're looking for, someone with some sort of investigatory experience.
Yeah, internal affairs investigation.
I think that would be helpful, sir. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful for at least one of the 2 that we choose, because I'm thinking that someone with that, it balances, like somebody with that kind of background can bring that experience, but somebody who does not have that background, they're looking at it from a different perspective as well. They're looking at that investigation from a different perspective. So I think in order to have some balance there, have the experience and the not so much experience with investigations, perhaps.
And Kim, I think you were going to say something as well.
No, it's just, I agree with that. I don't know if it needs to be limited only to IA. I think that's a great pool for sure. I don't know that it needs to be limited to just IA, but someone who's got that kind of prosecutorial experience.
So
yeah, go ahead.
That's what I was going to say, Jeanette. We, in my field at work, we find that in our attorneys, right? Our attorneys who review our investigative reports are sometimes some of our best reviewers, who are skilled at reading the reports that the IA people have already done. So I think you can find a wealth of knowledge in somebody who has experience in law enforcement, but lots of people do this work that aren't in law enforcement, that do misconduct investigations for a plethora of organizations. Every organization has this, right? Attorneys, people who have this experience. So somebody who has reviewed internal investigations and made decisions, or reviewed fact-finding reports.
No, that's a good point, because as Kimberly mentioned, maybe something to that effect, but maybe a broader description of what it is that we're looking for.
Madam Chair, I concur with everything everyone said. I think that if there is someone with investigative skill set, whether it be through former law enforcement or through some other entity, that would be good. But also that other person, if we could also give the community some sense of assurance that it's not being stacked with just a law enforcement mindset.
Exactly.
There's one of the things that I often say, that there's a lot of people with book smarts, but no common sense. And finding that balance between having common sense and being able to apply it, as well as formalized training or education. I think that the community would feel good knowing that we have some everyday people who may not be as learned as we are, but do have common sense and the ability to reason and to think things through. Might make it easier for members of that committee, especially with us coming on, and there was so much thought that we were the charging committee and formulating opinions about us. I don't want the administrative charging committee to have a tough road to hoe, not based on fact or on speculation, but more out of sense that committee does look reflective of all.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think, having some of those other things that we're looking for will help cover that. And to your point, Sarah's point, and Kimberly's point about broadening like what that looks like. It's not just someone with a law enforcement background, or I think would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. And then, Jensen mentioned, the possibility of creating a subcommittee. What are folks' thoughts on that? That maybe 3 or 4 of us. And I'm gonna hold on my question and I see Jensen's hand raised.
Yeah, just before you move on to that next section.
Yeah.
Try not to necessarily jump into your discussion, but I just want to make sure that everyone understands that when selecting the administrative charging committee, anybody that gets selected to be on this administrative charging committee, they have to go and receive training, which is a week-long training on police procedures from the Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that in case people are thinking, oh, you have to have this type of background. Everyone, from whether it's someone that's never interfaced with the cops to someone who could have been a former police chief, they would still have to go through that same week-long training. So I just want to make sure that stays centered in your discussion.
Thank you for that reminder. Yes, it's a pretty intensive training that the ACC members will have to participate in. So that is a very good point. So to the conversation about establishing a subcommittee, again, it cannot be a quorum. So quorum for us is a majority of the membership, which is 5. So it would be 3 or 4 members that were interested, would be basically kind of interviewing the applicants and, making the determination, selecting the members of the 2 members of the ACC that we get to appoint. So what are folks' thoughts on that? Is that something we're interested in? I see some head nods. And I guess what we can do, if that's something that we want to do, is to create a subcommittee of the board to make those determinations, to select the 2 ACC appointments if folks are interested.
Yeah, I think right now we're like formulating ideas as a group, and and I think we're pretty good together. I don't think we necessarily need a sub committee to do that, but someone else might feel a little bit differently about it. So I think that's a little bit. Our jobs are going to be we've got a road to toe, you know, with learning what we're learning. I think that we're going to be operating as a group, but you know, I think a subcommittee might put some separation into it. And I don't know, but I like to hear somebody else's thoughts. Because anybody that's coming for that position, I like for us all to sit back and hear what this person had to say and come to an agreement. Because we've been operating as a, you know, the idea is to operate as a unit.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I don't know. Jennifer or Jansen, how many applications have we received so far?
Jansen, do you want me to?
Yeah, you have the data in front of you. I believe we've received 24 applications, but Jennifer can go.
Okay, so 24 applications. So from those applications, we would select interviews. And I think the idea for a subcommittee, and Anne's points are very well taken. I think the idea for a subcommittee is the fact of, you know, we'd have to interview them and trying to get 9 people's schedules and all of that to interview.
Now, when you put it in that perspective, it's a little different, because what you're saying is now you're actually going through every one of those apps and
But we may
figuring it
not
out.
necessarily interview all of the applicants, right? That's something that would be decided, but certainly kind of, you know, how we were selected. It was several folks did the initial application, and a certain number of folks were moved on to the second application. And then, you know, there was an interview process. So certainly, I think that's what we talked about, having some interview process of ACC members, given the fact that they're what they will be doing is so important. I see Danny's hand up.
I was just gonna kind of agree with Anne, but I think, you know, could we use the subcommittee to narrow down to 5 or 6 top applicants, and then this group review those?
That's a good.
Just because I do think this is one of the biggest criteria or responsibilities we have, so I don't want to delegate that responsibility if we can.
You know, that makes perfect sense, I think. And so, you know, we want to get Jennifer right in there on that. And look, I've already nominated somebody. That takes a lot of the legwork out of it. So yeah, that does make sense.
I see.
People have hands up, but
Yep, I see Kimberly's hand up. I don't know if that was from earlier or.
No, it's from now. What I was going to suggest is it may be helpful for us to come up with a grid. I know, I'm sure other people use these when they do their hiring committees, but if we have all of us look at the applicants and then compare that to a grid, it can help us get a better idea of who might be a good candidate to actually interview. And then that might be a much different number than the current number of applicants. And some of that is happening now, and just talking about things like, you know, this idea of IA background or investigative background, et cetera. But we may, you know, things that we already know is that they have to be willing to do a commitment of 2 to 3 years. We want at least one person to have this background in investigations or internal affairs type things. But maybe we could come up with a more robust list of those things, maybe similar things to the job application that we did, right? To come on the board, some similarities to things that were put on the announcement for these positions, and then use that grid, because then we can rank them. Like what we typically do when we're looking for someone on a hiring committee is we have like a ranking system. And then we like compare scores and we can talk about them to see how, you know, why did someone get a high score? Why did someone get a low score? We can maybe talk some things out. And then at the end of that process, we have a number of people that we want to consider giving an interview to, either by phone or in person. And typically what we do is a phone interview and then an in-person interview from an even smaller list.
Thank you for that. Reverend Moore, I see your hand up.
Again, I think if we could work smarter, not harder, we have processes that have been established that we could employ. And because there's 8 of us that are not on the administrative charging committee, so that all could be a part, Could we not split it in half and make it 4 and 4 and have 2 subcommittees and then come back together? Would that work? Or would that be just too much where we're comparing? So it's not overtaxing one group or whatever, but 4 of us may meet with 2 and then based on whatever the rubric is that we establish or what we would like in those candidates, come back and compare and then make a decision based that way? Or is that too much breaking down, splitting us in half and forming 2 groups?
Yeah, I think so. That's also, you know, a thought, an idea. So it seems like folks seem to be interested in having a subcommittee for a purpose. So what about establishing a subcommittee that comes up with a rubric based upon the sort of criteria that we discussed here today, and other things that would be considered based upon, you know, how we were selected, what's in the application itself for the ACC, and perhaps in utilizing that rubric, the members can review, all the board members can review the applications and whittle that down to however many folks we feel that we want to interview, so that the whole board gets to interview and select. To Danny's points, is that's one of our big responsibilities as the board, is to select the 2 members of the ACC. So perhaps a subcommittee can kind of come up with the rubric, this how we would, you know, be ranking everyone. Everyone gets to review the applications and from there narrow it down, whether it's through a ranking system, as Kimberly suggested, or another format, to who we would like to interview, you know, for final selection. Does that seem like a kind of fair?
And Madam Chair, let me just say one last thing to like maybe season this and explain why I did make reference to the subcommittee. 24 applications thus far. And there's going to be additional outreach. There's going to be additional, we're going to communicate it further to make sure that we have a applicant pool that does reflect the diversity of Anne Arundel County. So 24 applications thus far. So in terms of efficiency, in terms of best practices, I can tell you that I've sat on RFPs, I've been a fiduciary in many other governmental boards and commissions, and one of the things that they always do is to expedite these types of things. You have it where you create like a finalist list, and then that's when you try to get as many of the board members to then take part in the final selection. But 24 applicants thus far. That's all I wanted to note.
Can I respond to that really quickly? And I respect that. My concern with that though is that works in established organizations, and we're really a growing organization, and there's still a lot that needs to be kind of flushed out. And so I think we would really benefit from the collective voice of all of us. These are pretty important positions, and having not had the opportunity to pick someone for this particular position, I think as many hands on deck as we can get would have us in a much better idea. I mean, much of what we're doing is creating a legacy for the PAB, and things like this, to me, just in the beginning at least, are going to require just a little bit more time and patience and selection criteria. As we move forward, I think we're definitely open for more, you know, facile type approaches, but the quick approaches seem to work to me in situations where you already know basically what you want. You've done the process over and over again. You know exactly what qualifications, like you just kind of regurgitate certain job applications as needed. Like, okay, now we need another this kind of member, we need another this kind of employee. This is employee, we're actually building it as we're looking for it to some extent. So I'm just a little concerned that if we don't get everyone's perspective as much as possible, we won't benefit from all the collective knowledge of the committee.
Thank you. I see Sharon's hand up.
Is there a deadline for the submission of applications?
So there was, I don't know what the deadline is. I don't know if you have that information, Jansen. We did
I thought it was
discuss.
August 15th or something.
So
The deadline was, from my understanding, the deadline was initially August 15th. But that deadline, it's essentially on a rolling basis at this point where, and the website has been updated to reflect that. Because again, we want to make sure that we have a cross section of the community that is applying to these very critical positions.
Thank you. I see Reverend Moore's hand up.
Question, with the 24 or the final number of applicants that are in the pool, will we alone, meaning the PAB, be drawing from that group, or will the county be selecting from that pool the 2 individuals that the county executive is going to appoint, and we will be drawing from that same pool?
That's a great question. If you want me to answer, Madam Chair, I can. If not, I'll defer to you. But yes, it is my understanding that both the county executive selections as well as the PAB selections to the ACC will be drawn from that pool.
Thank you. So subcommittee, maybe, possibly. One thing to remember again, per Lori's presentation earlier, if we have a quorum, we have to have public meetings, right? And schedule a public meeting for the public to discuss the selection process. And so again, I know folks talked about doing perhaps a subcommittee. So I guess I will just ask for a raise of hands. What are the thoughts of establishing a subcommittee to put forth a rubric that captures that which we discussed today, and perhaps some other related sort of profile that we would want for ACC members? Can I just get a show of hands for those individuals who would think that would be a good idea, just to establish the rubric, not select hands? Okay, so I see, and then I'll put my hands, so 8 of us. Okay, so
as long as everyone gets to see the rubric before we actually use it.
Yes, of course. It would just be to create it, share it with the group. Okay.
You
So
changed, you reminded me of the need for the public meetings a little bit.
right. So then if that's how we move forward, I'm just trying to gauge sort of where everybody is right now before doing like official motions and whatnot. If that's the route that we decide to go, which is, have 3 or 4 members that are interested, that would, I guess, email me and let me know they're interested. I know other boards that I've worked with, the chair will pick the folks that will be on the committee or subcommittee, but if there's only 3 or 4 that are interested, then they select themselves, I suppose. If that's the route that we take, then is the thought that we would use the rubric and everybody would individually rank the applications, and then we would gather those rankings and decide who to interview? Is that what folks are thinking? Or is it the thought that based on that rubric, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Is the thought that, individually members would rank the applications or select or weed out, however you want, whatever you want to call it, applications on who to interview, and then somehow that would be shared.
Jeanette, are you talking about members on the subcommittee would do the ranking? Is that?
No, I'm sorry. Let me be clear. The board members. So the subcommittee is only establishing the rubric.
Okay.
What I heard from the majority of folks here is that we want the full board to be involved in the actual selection. So, but that is a good question. Do you want the subcommittee to weed them out, or do you want the full board to weed them out? Again, I'm thinking, so I see I haven't decided how I feel about it, but with the understanding that there's 9 of us, there are going to be more than 24 applications for sure. And, we obviously want to move through this efficiently, but also thoughtfully. And so, the realistic nature of folks being able to dedicate that much time to going through applications. Sarah.
Hey, Jeanette, is anybody looking at these before us, or are we just getting all of them? I mean, is there any weeding out? Because 24, I mean, I've interviewed hundreds of people in my time, and some of them might not, like, there's always the bottom of the barrel, right? So maybe subcommittees to look at these and pull out the top, 10 for all of us then to pick isn't the worst idea, right? Because for the 9 of us to get together to look at 24 applications, it could be exhausting and it could be a process. So maybe subcommittees to look at the 24, even if it's just 2 separate subcommittees to pass them around, to say, hey, these 5 don't even meet the minimum qualifications. My question is, my short question is anybody seeing, do they meet the minimum qualifications, or is that up to us?
Yeah, I mean, we get to decide. I don't know that staff is involved, in weeding out the applicants. I think that's up to us. So I don't know what are the thoughts. I see some agrees from folks.
That kind of makes sense, because some people, we can just, kind of weed out instantly. And I apologize, I'm on a computer. I don't know how to put the hand up on here. So yeah, that what she said absolutely, does make sense.
I see Sharon's hand up.
Yeah, so if we establish, I guess, in the rubric, some basic minimum requirements, that'll make it easy to weed out the folks that don't meet that. And then you're left with the ones that go to the next level of review.
Okay,
which also provides equity, as if we're going to break out into 2 subcommittees, that will provide some equity in our weeding out.
So I'm recommending 3 subcommittees, 1 for the rubric, which is 3 of us, and then 2 subcommittees review the applications, and then we can come back as 9 to look at them if you guys want to do it, if everybody wants to have a say. So everybody gets on 1 subcommittee, but we're not necessarily tying up every Friday night or every Thursday night or whatever we have to do besides this. That's my recommendation, 3 subcommittees, everybody gets on 1.
So do you want to make a motion?
I have no idea how to do it, but that's my motion. 3 subcommittees, 2 for the reviewing of the application. So it could be as many as 12, it looks like, for each subcommittee. And then 1 subcommittee solely develops the rubric. And I would also like to know about the timeline. And Jansen, I don't know if that's a question for you. Is there an ultimate deadline for this? Because I'm a calendar person solely. I live and die by my calendar. What's the end date? Because I'll have it done by then, but probably by the 23rd hour.
Give me one
Okay.
second.
While Jansen pulls up the local law on that.
No, it's not a local law. It's specifically what.
Or the state law. Okay. Do you want us, we'll let Jansen pull that up. So Sarah has a motion on the floor to establish
second.
3 subcommittees. 1 to establish rubric, 2 to review applications. Dr. Ashworth has seconded. So all those in favor, raise your hands. Any opposed? No. So, okay. So that's what we will do. And so then for the administrative side of that, I would just ask if you're interested in being on, well, we're all going to be on the subcommittee. So email me what you would like, and I'll email you guys this after the meeting, but your preference, do you want to be on the rubric subcommittee, or would you like to be on a application review subcommittee? Rank them, your first choice and your second choice, and then we'll go from there. Does that work for folks? Okay, great. Look at that. Okay, good. And we discussed, the criteria, some of the criteria already that we're looking for. All right. So, and I think, I don't know, Jansen, if you've had a chance to pull up the information you were looking for.
I had sent Sarah a direct question to find out whether or not, because I wanted to make sure I understood her question appropriately. Was she asking whether or not, when is the deadline for these applications, or when is the deadline for when we're going to have them seated?
So when do we have to have them seated? Because that will sort of guide our timeline for when we have to have, because the rubric committee's got to meet first, right? And to develop the rubrics, and then the other 6 people in their subcommittee. So that'll help us divide our time appropriately.
I can tell you that we want to have them seated by October, and even with the extended applications, it's only going to, I mean, either with the extended application deadline, it's only going until the middle of September. So it's going to be a pretty rapid turnaround to ensure that we have the members of the ACC seated by the beginning of fall.
So you want them seated by 10/1, 10/15?
I believe in Jennifer. Do you have the exact date that you were thinking of having them seated? Was it 10/1 or 10 or middle of the month?
We were aiming for middle of the month, although
Okay.
there is no requirement that we have them seated by then. That's our goal.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification. Thanks to you both. All right, so we have a goal of October 15th being seated. We have applications that will be rolling in, but we have 24. If we can get a date by which we expect to have the application close, that would be helpful, I think, as well. And we have 3 subcommittees. Folks are going to email me. I will remind you their preference, rubric or review. And then after that, we will move forward with the subcommittees. And then at some point, I suppose we'll figure out the selection. I have a question, because I know if we meet as a quorum, but because it's considered like a personnel, is it considered a personnel appointment, the selection of the ACC, or no? Like, so could that be done in closed session? So obviously we're conducting interviews. That would be closed.
Yes.
The interviews will be closed, but it's in terms of when you say, are we selecting? It's not an employment. We're not giving them offers of employment. This is so I just wanted to make sure I'm fully tracking what you're asking. Because
No, I understand that, but even though it's not employment, it's individuals that we're selecting to be on the commission. So I don't know if that would be covered under personnel.
I am happy. We can double check that with Lori Blair in the Office of Law. But my understanding is that when you are discussing any sort of personnel issues, including applications, and this was true when we selected you as PAB members, that we didn't, we, in terms of the PIA requests and Open Meetings Act, don't have to share personnel records. And so Janice, I totally get the personnel thing. Our boards and commission members fall under that. So I believe that the charging committee will fit under that as well. But I think we should double check with Lori.
Yeah, that would be a great follow-up question for Lori, because that was sort of my understanding as well. But yeah, that would be great if she can confirm.
I also want to say one last thing. I think that in terms of just making it less onerous for you all, you can start reviewing the applications as they come in. So that may be something that you may want to keep in mind. So you can start reviewing the 24 and we can continue to update as additional applications come in, just to honor your time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think once we have the rubric established, then, okay, cool. That's good to know. All right. I see Reverend Moore's hand up.
Madam Chair, question regarding the process for seating them. After we identify those persons who are going to be seated, will that require them to go before the county council for seating, or been already established that we have that sole authority to interview and then they are seated?
Yeah, the authority is under the PAB's authority to select the members. And so then how we invite them to a meeting and present them to the public, make the announcement. Yeah, that's a good question. All right, so we're a little bit over on time. I see Barney's hand up.
Yes, I don't know I haven't figured out how to raise the hand without raising my hand. So somebody who's technically knowledgeable can help me. But I had a question for Jensen. Are we sure that the period for application has been extended? And if so, can you share with us the specificity as to why it's been extended? Am I missing something?
Jansen, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Yes, yes, the application period has definitely been extended. The website, the administrative charging committee, it reflects that as well. And again, we have only received 24 applications thus far, and just in terms of looking at the breakdown of those applications, they skew heavily male and they skew heavily white. So we want, even though the PAB is given the directive of, the law talks about a cross-section of the community. I think you guys have already intimated that you want to use that as your North Star as you make these selections. And it's going to be impossible to make those selections using that as a North Star if it's skewing heavily male and heavily white.
Thank you.
Which is why I'm telling you that there is going to be, I imagine, as we continue to do outreach and we share it over the course of the next 3 weeks, I anticipate additional applications will come in.
Okay, thanks for that. I just wasn't sure how that process was. Thank you.
Oh, no
And just
problem.
an interesting note, we've received 2 more applications during the course of this meeting.
Love it. Great.
Excellent.
All right, so we're running a little behind on schedule. We have members of the public that may want to provide public comments. So I think we're in a good place, unless folks disagree, that we've established that we will have a committee for rubric, 2 subcommittees to review the applications. Once that rubric is established, we can start reviewing applications so that it's not like all at once. We'll get clarification from the Office of Law regarding the closed session for, we agree that interviews would be closed, and then whether the selection itself would be closed under OMA. So I think we're good and we can move on to public comment unless anybody has any other burning questions or concerns. All right, great. So apologies to members of the public for the wait on public comment. For these first few meetings, we have selected to just have the presentations up front and public comments. So after our next meeting, which will be the conclusion of presentations from the local law enforcement agencies, after that meeting, we anticipate that we would be moving public comment to the front of the beginning of the agenda, so that folks do not have to wait along. I think we thought it would be helpful to hear sort of this overview and background for members of the public as well. So if you are a member of the public and you would like to provide public comments, you will have 2 minutes to do so. If you could please type your name in the chat box and the city or town in which you reside in the county, and then I will call on folks in order in which I receive in order in which I receive the names.
Yes,
So,
Chair Ortiz, it actually, if people could put their name and town of residence in the Q&A section.
sorry, my apologies.
Yes.
In the Q&A section, if you can put your name and your town of residence, and I will call on you.
Yeah, do you have access to that or do you need?
I
me-
do.
Okay, fantastic.
And I will be timing. And so just, if you can keep your comments again to the 2 minutes or less, that would be really helpful, just in the interest of time and ensuring that everybody who wants to speak is able to speak. So first I have Jennifer Sell from Severna Park. Welcome, Jennifer. Thank you.
hang on just a second.
Yep.
There we go. Ms. Sell, you should now have the ability to speak.
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yep. So my name is Jennifer Sell. I live in Severna Park. And I am a member of the NAACP, the group Showing Up for Racial Justice, and the Anne Arundel County Coalition for Police Accountability. And one of the things I was a little bit concerned about tonight was that both police chiefs that spoke to you guys both claim to not understand the timeline in which they need to get complaints submitted to. According to Bill 1622, which is the bill that created the Police Accountability Board, any complaints of police misconduct filed with a law enforcement agency shall be forwarded to the Police Accountability Board within 3 days after receipt by the law enforcement agency. So just to recap, Chief Fox says he's not sure of the process and thinks the county will handle the process. And then Chief Kaffheimer says he wasn't sure what the time frame was, but had created a draft process, like regardless of not knowing that. And I think that just kind of speaks to a lot of concerns that members of the community has, is that we're relying on these police departments that are used to not being held accountable. They're used to having the FOP just kind of work with the county to get whatever they want, to the point that they didn't even think it's necessary for like one of the few lines in the bill that specifically pertains to them. They didn't even think it's necessary to memorize that that's those 3 days where they have to get that information. And that is something that you will need to hold them accountable for. One of the things that really I found interesting was that earlier County Executive Pittman said he felt really good about the process for the PAB, but there are many people who didn't feel good about the process, and many of those people were Black, brown people, and also people who aren't allowed to be on the PAB because they have had interactions with the police in which they now have a criminal record. And so I think it's really important because the police chiefs, like in this literal meeting, showed that they're not taking the steps to hold themselves accountable, and the fact that there are so many members of the community that have just been completely burned just in the creation of the PAB. That's why it is so important for you guys to hold yourselves accountable, to remember that you do have people within the community who are looking to you to make these decisions and to hold these departments accountable. And also there are people here to help you as well from the coalition. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. Greatly appreciated. Thank you. And I see Stephen Waddy from Severn. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you all. You all have did a great meeting today, and I definitely am glad to see the new executive director here, Mr. Evelyn, and I do look forward to meeting with you as well. The Anne Arundel County Coalition is part of a statewide coalition that has been working on the ACC recommendations that are coming out of the Maryland Police Training Standards Commission. And I think that the comment that was made earlier about the ACC being a new process that needs to be thought through carefully and should not be rushed, it was spot on. Because we are dealing with a situation where there is a high level of opaqueness, and it's been that way for decades, if not centuries. And so in this new community-oriented and community-centered disciplinary process, it's necessary for us to be able to identify how we prioritize communities. And not just prioritize communities, but also prioritize fairness and prioritize the issues that have been swept under the rug for such a long time. People may not feel like Anne Arundel County, they may hear presentations like we heard earlier and say, well, Anne Arundel County doesn't need this type of scrutiny, not knowing that there was an unarmed Black man named Deontay Quarles who was killed in January, not knowing that there was an excessive force complaint filed against the Anne Arundel County police officer, which there was a suggestion that led to Tim Altamari retiring, because that was not mentioned during the county executive's speech earlier. So there's a need, there's a desire for accountability within the police departments. And I think that you all asking your questions that you asked earlier provided a definite need for that, a definite understanding. Those are questions that have never been asked by county council members in the 4 years that I've been political action chair for the NAACP. And I
Thank
think
you
you all
so
are great
much.
at
If
what
you
you
could
are.
wrap up.
Oh, yes, definitely. And I'd
No
be
worries.
happy to
Thank
share
you.
with you all our concerns regarding the ACC and its selection process that the Maryland Police Training Standards Commission has put out. Thank you.
Sure, absolutely. If you have our contact information, I believe, is online. And so please, whatever, concerns, information you would like to share with the board, we would love to receive it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jennifer and Stephen, for holding out until the end here. We really appreciate it. We know, you probably have a lot going on. And so to spend this evening with us. And like I said, after the 22nd, meetings after that, we will move up the public comment up front, but we wanted to give you the opportunity to hear the presentations from law enforcement and to help inform, public comments and hear your feedback on that. So we thought that was important, but thank you again. And I think we don't have anything further on the agenda this evening. Thank you everybody for being here this evening. If there is a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.